Hi and welcome to another episode of eCom at One. And today's guest is Jack Stevens, the founder of luxury men's sock brand Sirluxe Socks and global head of e-commerce at Oka. How you doing, Jack? You all right?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Well, Jack shares a very same passion as me, which is socks. So we have a fellow love of socks, which I think I had to get Jack on. Jack reached out to me a few weeks ago and said he'd like to be on the pod. So I thought, yeah, absolutely. Jack's doing some amazing things in a couple of industries. Maybe if you want to just introduce yourself, Jack, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, sure. We've already done a glowing intro, but so I'm Jack Stevens, founder of Sirluxe Socks. So we sell luxury men's socks all made using bamboo. So kind of substitute for cotton, more sustainable material, which I'll talk a bit more about later. And I also head up the ecom digital team at Oka. So Oka's a luxury furniture and homewares retailer, 14 stores across the UK, interior design, trade business, and then obviously online as well. Launched in the States about 18 months ago. And we are next week opening our first retail outlet in the US as well. So I head up everything digital in that business as well.
Wow, that's an incredible role. So very busy chap then.
Yes, spare time is a premium, and I had my first child in July last year, so he takes some of that spare time as well. So yeah, everything comes at once.
Blimey. Okay, so we've got socks, we've got furniture. If you've got to choose one, only one, which one would it be?
If you ask me in 5 years, maybe the answer will be socks once we've hopefully grown a little bit more. But at the moment, I have to say I'll go with the furniture. Yeah. So really exciting business, really exciting time for kind of Oka. I've worked there for coming up to 8 years, and I'd say the last 3 years has been kind of particularly exciting kind of time to be involved in the business. So the business was previously kind of founder run, if you like, and then we kind of brought in some really kind of incredible sort of private equity investment in kind of January 2018 it was, so just over 3 years ago. And since then the business has really kind of changed significantly and started to evolve in a way and at a pace that no one could have really kind of imagined before, if you like. So we've got a really strong set of investors that are really invested in growing the brand in the business long term. They're kind of previously was much more based around trying to get like an immediate return from an investment or something like that. It might be, okay, we can potentially provide you with the money to do this project, if I was to pitch them from an idea or something. But it's all around trying to get something done and a positive ROI within the same fiscal year. Yeah. Whereas with the current set of investors, they're much more aligned to the kind of long-term vision. We've got a very challenging but robust 4-year plan, I would say, that we're all striving and working towards achieving, which is basically scaling significantly here in the UK and then obviously across the pond in the United States as well. So yeah, really interesting time to be involved in the business, and luckily as well, if you like, I know a lot of people that have had challenges over COVID, the kind of pandemic. We're fortunate to work in an industry, if you like, that has been largely unaffected, and if anything has kind of boomed, if you like. The people are spending more time than ever in their homes and traveling less than ever. So some of them kind of big purchases that might have been kind of outside of people's previous capacity of what they could afford, they've not spent that £2,000-3,000 on a holiday last year. Maybe we'll invest that in some in that statement piece in a dining room or in a sitting room, all that outdoor furniture that they couldn't afford before. So we've kind of definitely ridden the wave a little bit in relation to that like increase in demand and interest in our industry, which is obviously ultimately a bit of luck of where you're in at that time when this hit, but it's certainly kind of helped us to accelerate some growth and build up an even stronger customer base to help us with the kind of, like I say, the next challenging 4 years.
So I think it's fair to say you've had an incredible 12 months, obviously with COVID and whatnot, and obviously the amount of industries similar to yourself that have done obviously very well, despite obviously a lot of challenges out there for a lot of industries, your industry. We work with a lot of sort of kitchen brands and, outdoor furniture and barbecues and hot tubs and different, sort of interior type brands as well. And some of the growth we've seen, obviously that's what you've seen. So obviously a great time to be in that industry. But we know that you've also got the sock brand. So why did you choose luxury socks? How did that come about?
So quite a few reasons, to be honest. And I've kind of always wanted to kind of, you know, have a side hustle, as you might call it. And so I was looking at kind of different options, what there was available that was feasible. I mean, it's all self-funded. So at the moment, I don't have any kind of like, you know, any angel investors or anything like that. It's all kind of like self-funded. So I wanted something that was, you know, feasible for me to go and kind of like do myself. I'm very keen for it to be a product rather than a service. I've previously done some kind of like consultancy, if you like, in relation to helping local businesses get set up online or helping with some kind of SEO, things like that with people. But I was keen for it to be like a physical product, like an actual retailer that I could look to set up. So I looked at what the different options were, some of the positives around socks. I mean, I'm into it anyway. I'm into kind of like my men's fashion. I'm into socks. If I look at it practically from a logistical perspective, they're small. It makes it easier to store, so cheaper costs from a storage perspective. They're cheaper to ship. When you're looking at fashion brands, I was keen for it to be in the fashion industry somewhere, because I didn't want there to be any kind of like potential conflict of interest with my role at Oka. Couldn't start my own kind of like interior design or home thing. Would have been the CEO knocking on my door saying, "What's going on here?" So I was keen for it to be in the fashion industry. From a sizing perspective, was a really kind of interesting part as well. And I mean, retailers in the fashion industry are rife with exponential returns rates due to people kind of ordering 3 sizes or something and then sending something back, especially for new retailers that are not familiar with the kind of differences that you can get in sizing. So, you know, with ours, we offer 2 sizes at the moment. So it's you know, 7 to 9.5 and then 10 to 12. So we capture most of the adult market there with just 2 sizes. Are you a small or you're a large? Effectively, that's kind of the model that we've got at the moment. We potentially might look to expand that in the future to kind of smaller sizes if we look to expand there into potentially women's as well. But yeah, so the potential for lower returns rates as well, which was something that was like an attractive proposition for it. I did some market research in relation to how many people buy socks, how regularly they buy them, and how many pairs that they own. You know, the average person was over 20 pairs of socks that they own. The frequency in which that they were purchasing was at least twice a year. So there was a good opportunity there for, you know, I don't want it to be that kind of one purchase that then is kind of 5 years and then you never hear from them again. Obviously, at the moment, we're trying to acquire as many customers as we can to build up that customer base. But I think moving forward, as we evolve, hopefully as a business and a brand, there'll be like a much better opportunity for like repeat purchase from customers as well, which again makes it an attractive proposition. If you can, new customer recruitment is expensive, right? So if you can reduce down reliance on that longer term and have like a more robust customer base that you know are going to purchase 2 times, whatever their frequency is, their 12-month frequency might be, you know, 2 or 3 or whatever, that kind of reduces the reliance on expensive new customer recruitment.
So we've got quite a lot of things there. I think if we just step through them. So obviously thinking about the guys that are listening in and thinking, and maybe they're thinking of maybe starting something. I think I'm keen to go back and talk about that conversation that maybe you had with your boss at you know, your Oka, so to see, well, you know, because I think there's a lot of people that are maybe like, well, you know, I'm doing X, Y, Z as my career, as my job, but then I would love to set up something. But that initial jump, it's not really a jump as such, because it's an investment, because obviously you're still doing, you know, you're still working at Oka, but you know, that initial conversation you're going to have with your boss, I think that's something we'll touch on in a minute. But we're ticking those boxes of, right, returns. What's the returns rate potentially going to be? You've got a couple of sizes, so not too bad. You've got the logistics, you've got price point, and then you've got the fact that in reality people need more than 1 pair of socks, 2 pairs of socks, and so forth. So there's a lot of, you know, and quite easy to store and ship. I think that's a crucial one, isn't it? When you're getting started with something. You know, how you're going to start, where's the stock going to go if you're going to have stock, you know, and quite often it's in the spare room or in the garage, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where mine is at the moment. It's kind of all stored on site here, if you like it, in my home until kind of get to a stage where I kind of run out of room, if you like. But yeah, massively important stuff. You know, logistics can be really expensive. You know, I'm very aware that there's loads of different kind of logistic providers out there, depending on the size of stuff. It depends on your business model. If you're trying to create like an initially profitable business, and, you know, I mean, like I say, I'm self-funded, so I'm conscious around trying to year one not turn a profit, absolutely not. I mean, that would be great, but I don't see that happening. But like from second year to have a kind of a business model that has kind of like strong margins, still driving value for the customer, and is a really strong product. And these logistical side of stuff is what can massively eat into kind of your margin opportunities. So yeah, there was definitely some key factors in there, and the product as well. So talk around the bamboo side of why the product is made was something that was really interesting to me. So not just to kind of jump on a bandwagon, but certainly across a lot of industries in fashion and retail and even in homewares as well, the whole sustainability, eco impact that businesses are having is a really key part to try and minimize where we can. And I learned a lot around the different kind of like fabric options that there were for the production of socks, and was really taken into the kind of quality of what you can produce with bamboo and how great that material is and how sustainable that material is. Now there's some processes that you go through to actually get that bamboo to be a usable fabric that are not so sustainable, which I'm very clear to kind of outline. But the actual product itself, the bamboo is an amazing material that's really sustainable compared to cotton. Like water consumption is massively less. You can produce 10 times as much bamboo in the same area because it's chopped, it's not farmed like cotton is. You've reduced on like labor impact. You basically don't have to water it. It's pretty like self-sufficient. It helps the soil that it's in. There's loads of like really positive environmental benefits of using that versus kind of cotton production as well.
Yeah. So going back to that initial conversation with the team at Oka, then, you know, you're sort of saying, right, I'd like to do this on the side. How did that go?
Well, my boss is really supportive ultimately of, she's very output driven. So if we're delivering what we need to deliver, and so far working from home has saved me so much time from like a commuting perspective, and just being at home more has allowed me more time to kind of be able to do two with no trouble at all. So I'd say that I've not done less work for Oka this time. It's just that I've had more time to be able to focus on this as well. But like I say, ultimately there's no conflict of interest there. I think they were kind of impressed in relation to the passion for the entrepreneurial spirit, if you like. And what's good and challenging is at the moment my role at Oka has evolved over the last few years. So I've got a team of 14, and I used to have a team of kind of 3, if you like, a few years ago, and we've really like expanded out in-house capabilities. And therefore my role has naturally evolved to being a little bit more strategic rather than hands-on in the weeds of stuff, which is a new challenge in itself and something I find really interesting. But having this kind of side part as well with the socks business enables me to kind of keep some of them skills sharp. You know, I'm using, a full end-to-end. I speak with the suppliers. Again, that's not something I have to do in the Oka world. We've got merchandising buying teams, teams of 20 that kind of manage that side of the business, right the way through to kind of like fulfillment, marketing, even keeping your skills sharp from an SEO perspective in Google Search Console every week and seeing stuff like, I didn't used to kind of go in that stuff for Oka at all very often. I mean, I've
logging into your ads every morning if you're running ads.
Exactly, yeah. So checking your own ads, setting up campaigns. I mean, like I say, I've got teams of people that run our kind of performance marketing within Oka. So there's no requirement for me to be setting up ads or to being in the weeds of stuff. And I think it's a really good thing to kind of keep them sort of skills sharp. It's like it's an interest as well. It's not something that I don't see it as like a job to an extent. It's something that like I love doing. I have a passion for e-commerce. I have a passion for like digital marketing, SEO. These are and fashion as well. So for me, it's something that I pick a lot of it up mornings, evenings, weekends. But it's not like, oh, I've got to sit down and do some work. I love it.
Yeah, you love it. It's fantastic, isn't it? It sounds like you've got a great balance, but a very, very busy chap at the same time. So how do you manage the full-time role and the side hustle? I know obviously in lockdown, I guess we have got more time in terms of the commute and those extra hours that we're saving. But how do you manage? Obviously, you say you've got a fairly young baby as well in the family, so you're a busy guy.
Well, he gets me up at 5 a.m. every day.
It's like the alarm clock.
Exactly. So I have loads of time to work in the morning.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. It's a challenge finding time. However, I totally agree that the lockdown, if you like, is the one of the key things that it's provided people is more time. I think more time at home, more time to kind of think to gather your thoughts. And not having time is a poor excuse in my humble opinion, if you like. The amount of people I speak to and be like, I'm just so busy. I watched 4 episodes of The Crown this weekend or whatever it might be. And like, well, don't do that, and maybe put that 2 hours into doing something that's a bit more productive if you're struggling for time. So, you know, I think there's definitely a benefit for the fact that we've had more time from less commuting, more flexibility at home. That's certainly helped, and I'm going to obviously see how I have to manage that once we hopefully get back to more of an office-based scenario. But I think you make time for the things that are important to you. It's around prioritization, and you know, yes, you have less free time, but there is enough time in the day to do the things that you need to do. I think if you prioritize them, a little bit less Netflix.
I think that's I think a lot of people will relate. You know, if there's sort of if they've ever used in the last month, I've not had time, or I've not had time. You know, just think, well, how many seasons or episodes have you watched of Amazon XYZ or Netflix XYZ? Cancel each one of those out.
Exactly.
Maybe you've just missed a 30-hour session on creating X or improving Y or setting up your Google Shopping or whatever you need to be, whatever's on the list that you've not quite got to because you've not got time.
Exactly. If it's 30 minutes a day, and I'm not advocating someone to kind of work from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. because that's certainly not what I do. And kind of getting out and about, and mental health super important. I know it's a bit of a buzzword to an extent, but I'm a huge advocate, and I know we talked at the start just before we started this around getting out and walking every day and getting out and now the weather's improving, the sunshine, the fresh air. I'm a massive advocate of that. Really kind of found that to be beneficial to myself. So I'm not advocating working from 5 a.m. till 10 p.m. far from it, but there's always that time. You make time for the things that are important, and like I said, I go back to the fact that for me it's a passion, it's an interest. It's not something that I find massively arduous all the time. There's sometimes where I think, do I really have to do that? But a lot of the time it's something that I'm interested in. Like people are interested in other stuff or reading or whatever it might be. It's an interest, and when it's an interest and a passion, it's less of an effort to do them.
Sounds like you've got a very good balance. It really does. Okay, so obviously Oka, very established, a lot of stores. Obviously, you've got a whole team there in your marketing department. What channel would you say gets Oka the best results at the moment?
So within my team, so the kind of digital function, the areas I'm responsible for at the moment that I run is through customer acquisition and retention. So I've got a performance marketing team, an SEO team, and a CRM team, and then like an online trading and content team, if you like. So I'm an SEO guy. Historically, that's kind of where I started my sort of digital marketing career, kind of 10, 15 years ago, whenever it was. So I'll be biased towards SEO just because it's close to my heart. But I think from a best results point of view, it depends how you kind of categorize best, like most measurable or most efficient or best at what. There's obviously a discussion to be had there, but I certainly think that from an SEO point of view, there's sort of something still quite romantic around not quite knowing exactly what's going to work to an extent, and the kind of buzz, if you like, that you get of checking rankings. I know it's not just going typing in and seeing where you go, but tracking the data, see how you're performing, and trying to develop a really robust SEO strategy that's suitable for your business. And I think if you can get that right, it's an incredibly powerful tool, and it requires a hell of a lot of work to actually get to the stage where you think that it's working the way that you want it to work. But from our side, we do some incredible work across all of the areas. I'm very kind to my team here. So
they'll be listening to this episode, won't they?
Of course they will. So I love all guys. But
hi guys. Hi SEO team. And paid ads.
No, I definitely think if you can, free traffic. I know it's not free. You pay for your time, effort, resource. The output, the outreach. You get out. You get out what you put in effectively. So things like that don't just happen overnight. But definitely.
But it'd be fair to say then that obviously, so SEO is nudging it slightly, but obviously on the performance side, on the paid side specifically, you are running search ads, shopping ads, Facebook ads, and they are successful. Or am I putting words in your mouth there? Or
you can say that. So yes, 100%. So we've actually been through an in-housing activity over the last 12 months, which has been really interesting for our business. So we used to run all of our sort of performance marketing activity, if you categorize all of them things plus a bit more under that one umbrella, with an agency and one person who kind of managed the day-to-day with that. we've actually gone through a process of in-housing, just as part of our investors are very keen to have in-house specialities. And the time that we were working with an agency was totally suitable for where we were at as our business at that stage. And they were very keen to start to like in-house and bring in specialties. And for us, brought in some strong people, and for the last year, we've done incredibly well with that. So we run a broad range of activity across all of your major platforms, but then a lot of other kind of like areas as well. We're looking at, various digital media partnerships and some kind of like higher impact stuff. One of the key things we're looking to try and improve is our overall brand awareness, which I would say is fair to say that in the UK needs improving. So in the wider kind of community, if you like, it's low. Within our specific target markets, it's much stronger. However, we want to definitely be growing our brand awareness, so that the vision is that if we are able to grow brand awareness and start to become part of people's consideration phase when they're thinking, right, I want to buy something beautiful for my dining room, for my living room, whatever it might be, and they're thinking that ochre is an option, as opposed to at the time where we generally pick them up, if we're not doing, depends on where in the funnel the activity is based on, then eventually it's a longer term strategy, but eventually your performance marketing budget is going to become more efficient as people start to consider you right at the consideration phase, as opposed to potentially when they're a little bit further down the funnel. So we've a broad range of activity, and it's been incredibly important for us in the United States as well, because when we've launched there, we don't have a good SEO standing from the start. We're effectively starting from scratch here. We don't have a way to drive loads of traffic through an email database, because at we started, it's very small. So we're heavily reliant on trying to drive people through like engaging ad formats and finding where the audiences are kind of meeting and talking about, and where we can be involved in them conversations. So it's been incredibly important for us from the first 18 months of our life in the United States. For sure.
So going back to the, obviously you've gone from having agencies or an agency managing the bulk of the performance side specifically, and possibly other areas as well. And obviously making that decision to bring it all in-house was quite heavily driven by that next level that you're looking to get at or get to, because the investors have got sort of strong targets and whatnot. Talk us through that sort of transition. I think because there'll be people listening in that, maybe, I shouldn't be asking this question because obviously we're an agency at heart, but I think it's an interesting journey, isn't it? Because, a lot of people we speak to, they might have been doing it in-house, and then they want an agency, and go the other way. But obviously you get to a certain size, you may try what sounds like you've succeeded at doing. But, it's horses for courses, isn't it? Different firms want different things. And obviously people move on, which can leave problems with a company, if they lose that 1-2 people. Whereas if you've got an agency, you've got a bank of people, 10, 20, 30 people potentially to rely on, pull on. Talk us through that sort of transition from agency to completely in-house.
Pros and cons, 100%. And it totally depends on the type of business you are, where you're at in your sort of journey. And I'm not an advocate either way to an extent. I just think that where we're at in the journey at the moment is suitable for our business. However, that's not to say that in 3 or 4 years we might need a slightly bigger infrastructure of support with an agency in some parts. I don't know, like I say, some digital media partnerships or whatever it might be. So there's total validity in depending on where you're at as a business. Now, for us, the transition was relatively kind of easy to an extent, I'd like to think. So we were able to hire, already had someone sort of running some parts of the agency. They left, and I hired a strong head of performance marketing in. We brought with him effectively a couple of other strong people that are more helping with some of the strategic side of stuff, and then more in activation as well. So for us, the transition was fairly easy. We brought in competent people that knew how to operate on platforms, that knew how to help with, one of them came from an agency, some of the people we hired, so was able to help with the whole media planning side of stuff. I had that experience of, looking at stuff a little bit more holistically and defining a media plan for us, presenting that to the kind of relevant stakeholders and getting buy-in that way. So for us, fairly smooth in that way. And then we were kind of able to phase out the agency as we felt like we had the kind of control, obviously along with our contractual terms being wound down in the same thing. And since then, it's been probably just over 12 months since we've been.
So 12 months in, so far so good. So we'll maybe have to have a regroup in 12 months, see how you're getting on. So going back to the, I think SEO slightly edged it on the channel. What sort of things are working for you specifically in that area of e-com SEO? Obviously, we've got a lot of e-com stores primarily listening to the podcast. Any sort of nuggets you can give the guys that's specifically working for you on the SEO side of things at the moment?
Yeah, so I've got some interesting thoughts about SEO and specifically in e-commerce. So before I worked in e-com, I used to work for Direct Line and Churchill, the big insurance brand, if you like. And after that, between that and Oka, I worked for the Ambassador Theatre Group, so the biggest theatre group in the UK. Both of these were big brands in their space. So from a search relevancy perspective, I use the insurance example for this one. So if you're searching for car insurance, home insurance, Direct Line is the biggest insurer in the UK. So Google wants to show you the most relevant results, the results that people would expect to see. So I always feel like it's the big brand bias that we always kind of like is talked about, actively across the industry. And we certainly benefited from that, no doubt about it. So if you're searching, I mean, this was right at the start of the kind of real emerging of the price comparison websites, Money Supermarkets, Confused.com. They started to really present the biggest challenge. The Money Supermarket kind of team did an incredible job with their sort of content production, relentless content production of like really high quality. They had a team of like 15 people just churning out content that was good as well. It was all really relevant in the space, and they really started to kind of do incredible stuff in that way. But we always had that, what do people expect to see when they are searching for a home insurance or a car insurance term? So we always had that sort of bias towards us. Now, fast forward to Oka, we have the absolute opposite challenge now. So we are not a big brand compared to, if you're searching for furniture, you're searching for lighting, homewares, you don't expect to see Oka as a consumer, and Google wouldn't necessarily expect to show you for these kind of like big headline terms. They're expecting to show people like John Lewis, IKEA, Made.com, the big boys, the people that are spending tens of millions every year on kind of above the line advertising, whatever it might be. The big brands that have got 100 stores across the UK, etc. So I think the biggest thing that I've kind of learned is to really, it's not to like set your expectations lower, but it's to be like targeted in what you do. It's better to get 20% of a 1,000 a month search term than it is to get 0% of 100,000 one, because you're trying to go after. Oka will never rank for the term furniture. Do we even want to? Like, probably not. Yeah, we'd get loads of volume. It would be such like high up in the funnel. Would be like super high bounce rate, really inefficient for us. And ultimately, it's around, we're using SEO to try and get people at that point to have search intent. They're looking for something. They are searching for a product. They are searching for a service. So if we're a little bit more targeted in the keyword set and the phrases that we're going after, we can be more effective that way. There's no point us spending loads of time, effort, resource, money on trying to rank for terms that are ultimately kind of vanity terms and that are not really suitable for our business. We sell high priced items. So we really need to try and manage that expectation at the stage of the search intent of that journey. Yes, there's obviously going to be opportunities to try and massage people to spend that little bit more on the higher quality item, but I think it's around really trying to be targeted with what you're doing, but productively targeted and kind of managing that expectation with the people. Because I bet people listening to this podcast, they all have that boss or that one term that they just want to show for, like whatever it might be, whatever industry you work in, you work in. I don't know.
It's funny, isn't it, how as SEOs and business owners, and you're checking your terms, see where you're ranking, and some of even myself, hands up, I check terms myself, and I know, and they just you become obsessed over terms. You can become obsessed over terms that aren't going to really drive your business in reality, and you spend too much effort there, And I do that in a fashion for myself, for my agencies, but it's more of a hobby for me, if you like, or as little like a, it's a bit of a, I spend a lot of time playing with stuff on SEO myself still. But the reality is, the amount of stores that are out there that are going after the wrong strategy, full stop, and trying to rank for things that are just right out here against brands that have been doing it for 20 years, spent probably 50 million quid on XYZ. You as a newer business to any industry, the guys that are listening right now, it's unlikely you're doing 400 million a year like many firms will be in every single industry. So if you're doing the low millions a year, okay, pick the right fight. go into those sub-cats and then research those sub-cats potentially and find, you know, product categories, subcategories, sub-brands, you know, the 3, 4, 5 word terms. But, you know, many of them can add up to obviously some serious search volume a lot quicker. You're getting returns on your investment in SEO in several months potentially, or, you know, fewer months than maybe waiting years and going, yay, we're on page 1 for furniture. Yeah, but we just did 300 grand and we've sold nothing. Yeah.
Picking your categories. Yeah, it's just a simpler way to put it. Yeah, I totally agree. That's the sort of strategy that we kind of adopt here, is really trying to be refined with our targeting, but still obviously making sure that we've got enough volume there and enough activity, etc., to support actually driving some volume through them terms as well. And as another sort of side point, I'm an advocate of kind of getting your house in order. I think it's very tempting as well to be, let's do some kind of sexy content marketing, because that's potentially the more exciting part of the SEO world, if you like. Oh, you know, we've reached out to these 3 people, they're really interested in covering. If we developed a piece like this, it's going to be whatever the format might be, you know, the creative side of stuff. It's certainly the part of the SEO, you know, ecosystem, if you like, that gets maybe some more of the headlines, but you don't invite people around to your house before you've built your extension, kind of thing. You need to get your foundations right. And I'm a big advocate.
Have a good tidy up. Yeah,
I'm a big advocate of kind of having your technical SEO in place, and something that, you know, people will probably look at the Oka site and think, well, you've not really got that going. And we've got challenges at the moment with our capacity to be as technically sound from an SEO perspective as we want to be. We are on an archaic platform, which is ultimately we're retiring, and we're migrating to a new platform in the autumn this year, which is as close to a silver bullet as we'll ever get in relation to starting from scratch and being able to kind of build the site from scratch with SEO sort of at the heart of the project, if you like, and making sure that we're right, because we're going to get hit by the Core Web Vitals update in May, no doubt about it. I'm very conscious that that's going to happen. You're looking at minimizing the impact is what we're planning to do, rather than really trying to benefit from it. And I think until we replatform later this year and have a more robust platform that enables us to really influence change in these areas, we are going to struggle. But I'm definitely an advocate of trying to get your technical SEO in a good place before you start to drive loads of links and content to it, for sure. Yeah,
it just gets left, doesn't it? Quite often, unfortunately, they're going after these other things that actually, hang on a minute, you can spend a lot of time and relatively easier. Well, not always, in fact, because obviously there's some limitations with platforms and things like that. But if it's if it's content on page, if it's certain site speed issues, some Core Web Vitals things you can fix quite easily. Obviously, then there is limitations depending on platforms and hosting and things like that. And I think e-commerce is naturally quite image heavy, so you got challenges there potentially. But yeah, I think quite often there's a lot of work that can be done in-house, or literally with the team within those businesses, without necessarily engaging agencies and techs to a degree. That's sort of there, maybe 70-80%. And then quite often then you do have to bring in that sort of specialist skill potentially. Obviously you've got your team, so it's a little bit different. But okay, so we'll change it up a little bit. So obviously you've been doing this a while. You've seen a lot of things. You've no doubt tested a lot of things, and all the different areas of performance and brand, and working in the US, UK. What's one big mistake that you've made that's kept you up at night? What's one big thing, or what's something that you think, oh yeah, back in 2014 we did X, Y, Z and it was a nightmare?
Well, how many mistakes have I made? Which one do I pick? No, I think there's been a few things that we've kind of done that have ultimately been failures, if you like. So I think a couple of years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, it's fair to say that in some of our performance marketing activity, I think we wasted a lot of spend, I think. And in hindsight, I think we should have pushed back on some of what we really wanted some of the KPIs to be for some of this activity. So just appearing on like a big homepage takeover on the Daily Mail, for example, is something that we did. Not homepage takeover, that was like more of a wraparound on some of their pages. Now, we spent a lot of money on that, and poor potential or poor brand sort of like experience, for example. Do we want to be linked with that sort of Daily Mail type of? I mean, we're definitely more in line with Times Independent sort of people. conscious, I think we wasted a fair amount of money maybe 3 years ago in some of our strategy and in some of the big formats that we did, that I don't think we really potentially had a really clear idea of what we wanted to get from that activity. Now, not everything you do have to have a positive ROI. If you're investing in brand activity and you're trying to grow your brand awareness, for example, and you've got a supportive set of investors or an amount of your budget that you're putting towards brand activity, and the outputs for that is eyeballs on the prize, or video views or impressions of this, and that is your KPI, then that's fine. I don't think we had this. I think we did some kind of big format stuff, and we spread it across a few things. So I really think the kind of impact was diluted. And hindsight's a wonderful thing, and no one's perfect. I think we made a decision at the time, think this feels like a plan that might work for us. But then in hindsight, when we kind of done the kind of analysis at the end of it, if you like, I think there was a lot of mistakes we made in how we set up that particular kind of part of the media plan. And that we're not flush with big budgets at that time, for sure. We don't spend 10, 20 million a year on performance marketing or kind of general advertising. We don't do any TV above the line stuff. So for us, we need to be quite efficient with what we spend. And we still do now, even though we're growing, we're starting to spend a bit more as we're able to kind of share that we're driving positive ROI, the new customers at an acquisition rate that everyone's really happy with. We still need to be efficient with it. And I think one of the biggest mistakes we made is trying to be too diluted in trying to do some of these big formats and really not getting the kind of impact for it, and wasting a lot of money. I think not take a lot of money for us as a percentage.
Well, it's all relative, isn't it? Everyone's got their sort of numbers they're working to, and if you're no doubt, as you said, that big sort of national press buy would have been, it's not going to be £500, is it? It's going to be in the thousands,
It's a bit more than 500.
Yeah. It's going to be tens of thousands, no doubt. So I think, thank you for sharing that. I think it's just nice for everyone to hear that. Obviously, you're a fairly substantial e-com store, running in multiple countries, but not everything works is the reality. But at the same breath, obviously you've got to try things, and sort of manage those budgets, so if things don't work, it's not game over. It's you're managing the expectations of the management, the investors, etc. But if there's maybe 5-10% of budgets that are used to test and try new areas, or test new areas within your existing performance marketing. So I know we have quite a lot of listeners sort of around the world, UK, US. What would you say is the difference the difference between your two strategies between UK and US? What are you seeing? What's sort of quite strikingly different between the two? What sort of takeaways could you give the guys?
I think the biggest, for use of a better word, mistake that people make is like calling it the US. it's a country, but it's 50 states that are all bigger than the UK. It's a monument. I don't really think I certainly wasn't probably aware of just the scale of it. It's mad, and ultimately that's what's attractive about it. There's 370 million people that live there. There's a huge amount of space, but it's so big, and you can again, I'll talk about being targeted in relation to kind of appreciate the other example was more around like keyword set from an SEO perspective. But like I said, we're in acquisition mode, if you like, in the States. So we are heavily reliant on new customer recruitment to hit our sort of revenue and targets for the year. So compared to the UK, where we've got like a robust customer base, we've got existing customers, lapsed customers that we can reactivate, and then obviously new customer recruitment important as well. But with the States, we're in acquisition mode. So we need to be really targeted in a different way with how we go to target customers, because you can just burn through your advertising dollars so quickly over there by just doing super generic campaigns and trying to target people that are searching for stuff. But really, we sell a maybe niche isn't quite the right word, but a niche product, if you like, that's not going to be suitable for everyone from a price point perspective, from a style perspective.
Yeah, it's like a taste thing as well. Yeah.
So the thing that's different is that it's huge. It's just a massive place, and I think we've certainly kind of started to target some of our activity from an advertising point of view, which is the performance marketing stuff we run is the key channel for us at the moment in relation to new customer recruitment. We do some like targeted recruitment pieces across direct mail as well, which have performed well for us, but the majority of it is coming through how we're targeting people digitally. which I think is a kind of a compliment to the strength of our brand, that people are investing in these products without being able to go and see them from a new brand in the market that they haven't seen before, they haven't probably heard a lot about. But we're starting to really refine our targeting in key areas where we know our customers are, and it wouldn't be a surprise.
You mean location-wise, the different states?
Yeah.
So rather than UK, typically, you've got your search and your shopping ads running. If we could say Google, for example, you've got them running in the UK. Typically, what I think you can see, or what happens is, you set up the campaigns in the US and you target all of the US, and then it does. You're thinking, why doesn't that work? US is, what are we talking? 10 times bigger? Not quite. 10 times the size. Why is it not 10 times the volume? And normally it's like, it doesn't work quite out the gate like that. So you're saying, I think, you're going in specific locations, geographical targeting, different states. Maybe talk us through that and give us maybe a specific example, because I think a lot of people we speak to, it's that. I think there's quite a misunderstanding how to tackle that, on paid ads.
Yes, even more specific than states. So yes, like we look at state information, we target stuff around that. We don't totally discount the rest of the US, but we know we've got clusters of customers in key areas along like the East Coast. So New York, up to something like around Boston area. Yeah. And then, how we entered the US market was in Dallas, in Texas, where we bought a sister brand, if you like, that we retired about a year later, and kind of that was our entry point. So we know we've got a cluster of customers around there, so we do targeted marketing around there, and then some on the West Coast in the areas that you would expect around, LA and San Francisco. So not talking about states even necessarily, like being more targeted in relation to setting up specific campaigns for like audiences that are based here, and like basing lookalike audiences based on people that you've recruited from this specific area. And like I say, we've got I think a fairly modest budget to try and drive a hell of a lot of volume from. So the being targeted from a locale perspective is, if you'll appreciate you'll have a variety of people listening to this that work in totally different industries. That's just where works for our customers. I'm not saying go and invest all your money in, places in Dallas or whatever it might be. But for us, this is where we know works for us at the moment. And efficient customer recruitment is absolutely critical for us, kind of being able to get to the place where we need to be in 4 years at the moment. So I 100% advocate being really targeted, understanding where your customers are, and focusing your marketing efforts around that, as we look to try and evolve some potentially out of home offerings and stuff. You need to start to make an impact in an area. Just saying we're going to launch in the States is a recipe for disaster.
So focus on rather than the 52 things, or half I've lost count of the state. That's not right, is 50, it? How many states? How many?
50 states.
50, isn't it? Of course, 50 states in the US. We're looking at potentially some of the in-house data that we've got from existing. Maybe that's some of our Facebook data, our existing data areas that we may have already touched on already, and then focusing on obviously a lot tighter areas to start with, and then building those out. Okay, so we always like to finish every episode, Jack, with a book recommendation. What would you recommend to our listeners?
Now, I've not listened to all 50 episodes so far, so I'm conscious you probably had one or two of these already, but so I had two. So True Dog, Phil Knight. Have you had that one before? Probably yes.
We have, but that's fine. That's fine. It's a fantastic book. I absolutely love that book. Yeah, it's right behind me somewhere there. I think it is. Yeah, on
your shelf behind you. Really superb book. I enjoyed reading that from start to finish. And another one as well is Let My People Go Surfing by Yvon Chouinard. I probably pronounced that totally wrong with my twang of my accent. But he's the founder of Patagonia, like experienced climber, if you like. And, Patagonia is a brand that's very aligned with sort of minimizing impact on the environment. They do a lot of work to try and, give back, if you like. And his journey from effectively making a couple of bits of climbing equipment for him and his friends to developing this huge global brand. Yeah. Similar sort of story, if you like, but very, very different like brand ethos, very different journey that he's taken to kind of get there. And the stuff that they're doing now is still really admirable. I think it's quite a short book, super easy read, and one I really enjoyed for sure.
Yeah, no, that sounds fantastic. Actually, I think the next time when I'm actually on holiday, whenever that will be, I think that sounds right up my street. To be fair, so yeah. Well, thanks, Jack. Thanks for being on the eCom at One podcast. If the guys that are listening want to find out more about yourself, more about the brands, what's the best place to do that?
Can go on my LinkedIn profile, which is linked just / Jack Stevens at the end. You've got sirluxesocks.com,
yeah,
and of course oka.com. So yeah, reach out if you've got any questions.
Thanks, Jack. It's been a pleasure. I'll speak to you soon. Thank you.